So now we're going to spend a few minutes understanding the rescheduling, the putting in of logic and getting the system to calculate things for you. So you saw how we had the logic here. So that affects tasks with links, but you've got to also understand that there are some options behind the reschedule that we can set. And I want you to understand the options that they do. So at the moment, any tasks with no links are just not moved. They're left wherever you draw them. And the same is true of those with only an outgoing link. So if I were to change that to say, move everything as soon as possible, then all of these tasks would go back to the very beginning. So if we make the change to the setting and then we schedule it, it'll go back to the start date, and it's probably not what you want. Okay, so you probably don't want that setting. So the good thing, of course, is that we can undo a reschedule and go back to where we were before we did that. And then if we look at the reschedule options again, which are, so we probably want to leave tasks which we have drawn with wherever we draw them. But if we move tasks which have got the same thing, so I would say let's leave that the same and let's move that back as soon as possible. So we then want to put some links in. So we can't start the first plot till we've done this activity. So put the cursor along the top or bottom edge of a task, you get the cursor shape. We're going to create a link from the end of that to the start of that. So you've got to look out for that cursor shape. So where you've got the sort of, if I go too far, and it's very fine, and this is where you want to increase the zoom scale, that would put it on the end of the activity. So this is on the start of the activity. So if I were to elongate this, that would move to there. Now we also perhaps want to say we want to do these two together because they're a pair. So we're going to put those two together until it gets to first fix stage. So after strip scaffold, that little baby there. So when that's finished, I want the one below to also do that. And this one here, we don't want it to move backwards. So we're going to put an imposed pin on it. So you've got a start on or after, and that's a particular date which will never move. And you've got what's called a holding pin, and that holding pin, if you move the activity, you also move the date. So we'll just see what happens if we reschedule that. So that's moved everything along. This hasn't come into effect because it's not any earlier. So that's because the duration of this one is longer than the duration of the one above. So if we were to reverse that logic, so if I select it and delete it, and again, we click on this, we get the cursor shape and we go up to the one above, and we reschedule again. So it's going to move the one above to the right so that the first fix starts to happen after the, and I picked up the strip scaffold activity with the link. So it is quite tricky when these are so small. So you can pick a link up and move it. So I tend to make a bit of space. You pick up the four-headed arrow and you can move the link to there. So if we wanted this one to start a bit earlier, so maybe we want to take the flag off that and say we want to start that one when we finish the whole of the substructure on the previous one, so it'll give those guys some continuity, but we don't want any of the brickwork to start until this time. If there's no logic involved, we can put a holding pin on it and reschedule it. So in some ways, the reschedule is a powerful mechanism, but you've always got to remember to move things around with the reschedule, because you've either got to do it all manually, which is leaving these settings here, or you're going to move everything as early as you can, and you're going to put in links and constraints to set the position of activities. And it really is dependent on your own desires. But I would also say, when it comes to entering progress, you really want to push uncompleted activities ahead of time now, and the reschedule will do that for you. You don't have to do that manually. So that's a good tip all about rescheduling.